It's also dividing the Labor Party. You've seen Ed Husic this week, the Industry and Science Minister, the first Muslim cabinet member in Australian history, spoke out about people in Palestine, and he spoke to Sky News today about the plight of Palestinian people than Israeli hostages. Take a listen.
I do feel very strongly, as I have said on the public record this week, that innocent Palestinians are paying a horrible price, an utterly horrible price for Hamas's barbarism. There is by no doubt a requirement, an understanding, there will be an undertaking by Israel to hold Hamas to account for what happened on 7 October, without question. But again, we've seen 1,000 children lose their lives since that point in time. And as my colleague Anne Ali pointed out, they're not Hamas.
Sure, he's right, Evelyn. The kids aren't Hamas. The kids are innocent in this situation, unfortunately get caught up because we know Hamas likes to use particularly children as human shields. About half the population of Gaza is children. But it's interesting to see a Minister of the Crown, a Minister of the Albanese government, spend a lot more time talking about Palestine than he is about Israel, which is, of course, our ally in this situation.
Yeah, it's really complicated. We are allies with Israel. We are all part of the West. So, we have to think in terms of that as a nation, like where our allegiance is. But, surprisingly, through this whole Palestine and Israel thing, I'm actually surprised with who I would probably more closely aligned with thoughts. I would probably be, I'm labelled every name under the sun on the internet. Very far right, very conservative, ultra conservative, hyper conservative. But I've been really disappointed in conservative politics around this whole thing because there is just so much like hunger for war right now. And so parts of what he said I actually found refreshing. I think he brought up things that I found to be good.
But who triggered a war? Hamas. What are they Jews supposed to roll over and let?
No, that's not at all.
I think that's what he was saying, though. And I must admit, when I sort of saw the headline, Ed Husic says this, and I thought, well, I thought Ed was really sensible, and he's usually one of the most level-headed voices. And when you listen to the whole thing, he is placing the blame for this squarely at the foot of Hamas. He says very clearly and unequivocally then and in the original comments that it was the barbarism of Hamas's actions that caused this.
But then he's accusing Israel of collective punishment. I mean, that should fall on Hamas, which uses its that's
absolutely correct, and certainly people on the ground.
Hides their military.
Let's kid ourselves here. The Labor left have always been pro-Palestine.
That's right, but Husic's not on the Labor left, he's on the Labor right.
I'll give you a list of names as long as your arm about people in the Labor Party who have been pro-Palestine.
But Husic is of the right, though, and everyone in the Labor Party on the right, and I've been in contact with so many of them recently, are absolutely appalled by Hamas, want Hamas absolutely wiped from the face of the planet.
Publicly, I'm not sure they'd be saying that privately.
Ed Husic said
that's what they're saying.
He suggested that they should light up the Opera House in the colours of the Palestinian flag.
Which is just ridiculous.
He didn't say that. He just said we need to be mindful of that. He said, people, there's not as much awareness or sympathy for the suffering in Gaza as there has been for the Israel. They're not.
But it's basically what it is. But this accusation, this specific accusation, Steve, of collective punishment. Collective punishment is a war crime. Now, whether or not he's being tricky in using the words he did, he is basically accusing Israel of war crimes, right?
Look, innocent people get killed in war. That's a fact. And that's what's happening here, as much as we hate it. I have a lot of regard for Ed Husic. I know him pretty well. I've interviewed him dozens and dozens and dozens of times. He's talking to his constituency here, and he's probably being brutally honest, where some other members of the Labor left are probably not being brutally honest.
I mean, Anne Ali actually did suggest that there could be war crimes. But I would again like to see the people in the Labor Party, in government and on the streets, when it comes to children being killed, why don't they say, well, what's happening with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad bombing of the hospital side?
That's
What's
right.
happening with the actual? Why do we
Which the
only hear
Greens
about
flip-flopped about,
killed
you know,
children when it comes to blaming Israel? We don't hear the protesters say, "How about the Palestinians killing their own people?"
Well, we know why
That's
that
right.
is, don't
That's
we?
the biggest.
Anyone
The
choose
biggest threat
to
to the
blame?
Palestinian people is not Israel. It's Hamas.
It's Hamas, of course.
That's the reality of it.
And that is what the left has to face. And again, they need to wear this like a millstone around their neck until they get it through their head that they are basically providing moral support for a terrorist organisation.